Alright guys, today in the shop we have a 2014 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD, and we are going to change the rotors and the pads on the front. Now I already have the wheel off on the other side, but I do want to just show you on this side for an example. You are going to start with these wheel covers. 7/8 socket, we'll take them right off. These are plastic. Be careful you don't break them, but just get a socket. A lot of times you can just do them by hand with the socket, but anyway, 7/8, we'll take that right off. Your lug nuts here, also 7/8, you're gonna take these off. Now be very careful, make sure your socket is fitting on there. Chevys in particular, these lug nuts here, these round off very easily. Every time I work on a Chevy, these are always rounded off. Be very careful taking them off. And we're back here on the driver's side now. This is where I'm up to. The wheel is already off. All right, so one thing you want to do is we're going to have to access bolts on the back side of this whole cradle here to take that off. So you can either pull on it. It's hard to do with one hand, or you can turn the steering wheel. See how it's kind of angled out now? It gives you a little bit of room to get in back here to the two bolts that we're going to take out. 95% of the time, these bolts are going to be very tight. Get yourself some PB Blaster. Once you have that wheel off, it's probably a good idea to just go and soak everything first and then walk away for about 15 or 20 minutes to come back. You're going to find that these are going to come off a lot faster. Now let's go behind the caliper and I will show you what bolts we are taking off here. All right, let's see. So if you look here, you're going to see these are your Torx bolts here. Okay, if you were just going to remove your caliper only, then you would do the Torx bit that's there, and there's going to be another one on the bottom. All right, in my case, I want to remove this whole cradle as well, because I need to get this rotor off. So the bolts that we're going to do, I will show you. If you look where your Torx head bolt is, just come up right behind it. You're going to see the other bolt right there. All right, and you can use your 7/8 with that. It's going to be very tight. You're probably going to need a leverage bar to break that loose. But coming down to the bottom, same thing. You're going to see your Torx head there. If you don't see it, there's probably a little black rubber cover here, which you can just grab a pick and take out, and then it'll expose that. But you want to go right below that, and you're going to see the other one, okay? So it's that one, and then we're going to come up here to the top. Let me find that bolt again. And it's that one right there behind the other Torx head at the top. And you can also see that top bolt from up here. It's right there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our ratchet drive and our socket and my leverage bar, and we're going to go ahead and crank them loose. All right, so we're going to take our socket. We got a nice long ratchet drive here. Put it up there on the bolt. All right. And I got this nice long leverage pull here. They usually come off fairly easy after. I've had this soaking now in PB Blaster for a little while. So I'm just going to push down. I think that was it. Let's see. Oh yeah. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. After you have those busted loose, you can pretty much finish taking them off with your ratchet drive, or just use a battery one, which you'll find they'll come out a lot faster with this. Back them out all the way, like so. There's your bolt there. All right, now if you probably noticed, I have a bucket over here. That's for when we get these off. This whole thing will then become loose. Sometimes it's not loose, it's a little bit jammed. You got to get a leverage bar down in there and pry up to start wiggling this thing so you can free it. But this is going to be very heavy, so I have a bucket standing by, because we do have this brake line here and we don't want to break this or overextend it. So we're basically going to lift this off, and I'm going to set it onto the bucket without doing any harm to my brake line here. But let me go ahead and get that bottom bolt out of here. All right, most of the time it's not just going to come collapsing down, but hey, you never know. Be careful and be ready for this thing to fall. I'm holding one hand is on my camera, so I was just kind of taking a chance backing that one out. But it is there now. We're going to pull our bucket up here, and I'm going to try to pull this off and lay it on there. And you can see the rotor is actually moving with it now. I don't want the rotor and this to come off at once together. This one is kind of stuck on there, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a lug nut that I took off when I took the wheel off. I'm going to put a lug nut on here just to hold this rotor in place, and then I can get my pry bar and kind of pry up on this. There we go. And that'll hold that in place. Try to jiggle this loose. Maybe I won't need a pry bar. Oh, there it comes. Come on, people are watching. And just watch, because there's a lot of pinch points in here where you pinch your fingers, you're gonna feel it. All right, it's off. Be very careful with that brake line back there. I know you can't see it right now, but you don't want to overextend that thing. Push this bucket in nice and close. All right, I got it rested up here, and you can see there's not a whole lot of tension. I'm not overextending this. There's still a little bit of play in my brake line there, and that's the way you want to keep it. Right now, to take our pads out, first thing I normally do is I'll just pull this pad out, and sometimes these get a little rusted in there as well. You're gonna have to work each side out at a time, and again, I have one hand, so jiggle that out of there. All right, so what I'll typically do with this one, I'm gonna leave that other pad in there. I'm gonna leave that in there, because now I'm going to get a C-clamp, and I'm gonna put it over top and squeeze so that we can compress those pistons back into the caliper here. I got a C-clamp just like this, nice big one. First thing you want to do is you want to pop the hood on a truck, and you want to loosen the where you would put the brake forward in. You want to loosen the cap. Don't take it all the way off. You just want to loosen it. I'm going to put it over there. It actually looks like I'm going to hit the rotor here. So this should now be loose, which it was. We saw earlier. I got to take this lug nut off. I want to pull this rotor out of the way so that I can get my C-clamp on there. Took the lug nut off the bottom. Now this should just come loose. Now, also, a lot of times these are going to be just frozen on there. You're not going to be able to pull it off. All right, again, this goes back to what I said in the beginning. Get some PB blaster or some knocker loose, some deep creep, whatever, and just saturate this whole area. Get inside where these studs are here and get around this lip. This is where the rotor gets corrosion and you can't pull it off. I don't recommend crawling under the vehicle unless you have it really, really safe and you know it's not going anywhere. But if it's still locked up, you can go underneath and hit it with a rubber mallet, or you could use a sledge. If you're not keeping the rotor, then you can use a sledge, and you want to hit it, spin the rotor, hit it, spin the rotor, hit it, and eventually this thing will pop off. This is also very heavy. Make sure your legs aren't laying out here when you're banging on this. Another thing you could do is just sit out this side if you don't want to go under the truck and do the same thing. Just kind of tap and then spin it and then tap. But the best thing that I found was soaking this thing, taking your time, and walking away and coming back, and they come off a lot easier. So right now I can pull this off, and I'm going to need both hands because it's heavy. All right. Moving forward, now I have a little bit of room to get my clamp in here onto this caliper, and we can compress those pads. Okay, you can see I have my clamp going over the caliper there, down onto the brake pad on the other side, and we are just going to crank this, and it's going to compress those pads in to get those caliper pistons pushed back in. But I am going to turn this C-clamp. This is going to take a little bit of pressure. All right. Now that we have it compressed in, we can kind of back this off. Pull our clamp out of there. And we could, that was our first pad we took off. And now you have this other pad that is compressed. Let's see if we can see it. Alright, there's the other pad still in there. The way we're going to get that out is if you look through here, you can see parts of the pad. So just to loosen that up, we're going to take a little screwdriver in there and we're going to push, and we're going to go through here on this side and we're going to push and start working that pad out of there. Alright, so let's get in there, push, get in this side. I'm going to push a little bit, just till we can get it with our hands on this side. I think I got it. There we go. And we got that pad out of there. Alright, moving forward. So, when you saw the brakes coming out, they ride in these little channels on each side, and there's these little metal clips. They just pull out like that. Okay? Typically, you can reuse these. They do come with new ones in the package. Alright? These brakes, actually, the story behind these, they weren't done that long ago. And I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line in the last couple of months, the rotors got some dust or dirt in there, and they just got all scored up. These were replaced not too long ago. We are actually going to keep them in there. But what I'll do is I will still put a little bit, just a smudge a little bit of grease in there, right where the pad rests. Typically, anywhere metal meets metal, always like to have a little bit of grease, just to prevent squealing and things like that. And these just pop right back in there like that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of dab of grease on each of these channels, and then we're going to slide our pads in. Alright, we'll take our first pad, and we'll put it down in there. Alright, so we got, line our top one up with that groove there, and the bottom one, is it resting in there? Alright, there it goes. Slide it back in there. Okay, looks like we're all the way in. And then we'll take our next pad and we're going to put it in there. This one's a little bit harder just because of the angle we're on, but we're going to get it. Let's take this pad. Let's see if I can line it up with that groove down there. I might actually have to set the camera down on this one. We'll see though. And you got to get these in straight. See, if it starts going on an angle like that, you're not going to get it to line up properly. You almost got to get a little bit in on one side and a little bit in on the other side to get these to go in. Yeah, I'm going to need both hands here. Yeah, I definitely needed both hands. So you can see I got it just started. My pad is straight. I got it just started in the channel there and just started in the channel there. And then you'll be able to push it in. Because when you start trying to do it in on an angle, you're not going to line it up properly. Okay, so now this is why you compress those pistons in, because before they were out, which your pad would have been about right here, and you would only had a little gap, and it would not fit over that rotor with just that little gap when you have your new pads in there. So you have to push those pistons back in so that you have a nice large gap here to slide over the rotor. Now we can put our rotor on. Once you have your rotor on there, you can see it's going to be a little bit wobbly, which that can become a problem when you go to put your caliper on and lay it over top. This is going to wobble all over on you. So typically what I do is I'll take one lug nut, and it wants to push out from the bottom here. So put a lug nut on the spot where it wants to push out, and we're going to run that all the way down just to hold that rotor in. Just like that. Alright, now that'll keep it from moving around on you. We can take our caliper now. And you want to be careful when you're lifting this off of the bucket and putting it on. You don't want to knock your pads out. So we're going to lift this up, put this right on the same way we lifted it off to not stress out that brake line back there. And our bucket is in the way, so we're going to need to slide this bucket out of the way. There we go. Just like that. And it slides right back over. Now, you're going to have to get your two bolts that you took out you're gonna have to hold this caliper with one hand because it's gonna want to slide on you. And you're gonna try to take this top bolt, try to line it up, and at least get it to start threading in. It's gonna take a little bit of strength because these are a little bit heavy, but you'll get it. Just move the caliper around and turn the bolt at the same time until you feel that start threading in. And if it's not threading in and it gets tight right away, then you're cross threading it, so back it out and try again. All right, I got my top bolt in there now holding this, and I can go ahead and put that one back in the bottom that we took out. Just kind of move the caliper around with your hand until that bolt starts threading in. And there we go. I got both of the bolts threaded in. I am going to go ahead. I'll use my small Milwaukee to go ahead and just snug them up. All right. Now you never want to trust your battery tools, so we're going to put this socket back on these bolts, and we're going to go by hand now, make sure that they're nice and tight. You don't need the leverage bar to tighten these up, but it would help if you had a nice long drive like this, which gives you some leverage already. All right, she's tight, and we'll do the one on the bottom here if I can get my head in here. You can see it still had a little bit of play in it. All right. Now we can go ahead and we can back this lug nut out of here. And the other side I had already done. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to tighten up my cap on my brake cylinder up here. Turn that back. And what we'll do now is we're just going to go into the truck and we're going to pump the brake a couple of times just to get these pads to compress onto that rotor a little bit. But at this point right now, you should be able to turn this, and you'll hear a little bit of friction from the pads. But we're going to go up there, pump the brakes, and that will push these pistons out and close those pads in along that rotor. All right, I turned my key to the accessory position. I didn't turn it on all the way, and I'm just going to do some light pumps here just to get those pads compressing. And you'll feel it get tight. There we go. Now we're getting tight. So like the third or the fourth pump, they should be locked around them rotors. Now I don't have anybody with me, but one thing you can do is you could have somebody sit out there and spin that rotor around when you're not pushing on the brake, and then push on it as they're spinning it, and it should stop on them. Those brakes should be grabbing that rotor. But when you're by yourself, what you're going to have to do is just get those pads compressed on there like we just did. And we're going to put the wheel on now. And we're going to go head out in the parking lot and take it for a drive. Now, before I put that wheel back on, there's just one thing I want to mention about the lug nuts on these trucks. Okay, so I've seen a lot of people do this. When you put these on, you can see how these studs are tapered on the end here. And when you go to put these on and you turn right away and it locks up, that's cross-threading. These trucks, you can see it already locked up on me. You kind of have to wiggle it a little bit, and then there it goes. You should be able to thread that all the way up like that. All right? But when you stick it on there like that, see, I stuck it on and turned it, it got tight right away. You don't want to do that. Wiggle it around. There you go. If you have to, pull it back off and reset it again. But just keep wiggling that until you feel that go on nice and easy. Because you will cross thread these pretty bad. And then the next time you go to take this wheel off, guess what? You're going to be replacing all them studs. And that, my friends, is how you do brakes on 2014 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD. Now remember, every mechanic has their own ways and their own techniques of doing things. And it also depends on how bad your brakes are, when the last time they were done. You may not have to remove the rotor. You may not have to remove that whole cradle. You might just be removing the caliper. Unfortunately, in this video, I didn't remove just the caliper. But when I do get the chance, I will do another video on removing the caliper and putting the pads on that way as well. But hopefully this tips helps. And if it did, guys, please take a second, hit subscribe below. I'm really still trying to get my subscribers up, and give me a thumbs up. And again, I appreciate all my subscribers that have been following me over the years. The channel's finally starting to grow a little bit. It's not quite where we want it to be. I know we can have more. So it only takes 1 second. Just hit subscribe. I work on all kinds of stuff. Cars, trucks, machinery. And there's always going to be something, some kind of tip on here that maybe can help you. All right. I will see you guys next time. Again, thank you for tuning in. I'm out.